Thanks for being here today. And to those of you tuning in virtually, it's great to have you. Today is International Women's Day, a significant day where we more intentionally recognise the women in our lives, celebrate their achievements, and face up to the challenges they still encounter. And so today we're hosting a panel aligned with the UN Count Her In theme for 2024. Our panel today will be a comprehensive discussion about the current landscape of gender diversity in AI and tech, the pivotal role of diverse perspectives in mitigating bias within AI models, and the collective effort required through initiatives, policies, and allyship towards closing the gender gap. Though Leo has scaled rapidly, we've been super intentional about building a diverse team, and today we're privileged to have Donna, Ellie, Jessie, and Renee sharing their insights and experiences with us as we explore actionable strategies for a more inclusive and diverse future. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to the team.
Alright, thank you for the introduction, Jacob, and thank you to all our wonderful women for joining us on the panel. I'll be posting the questions, and we have a time allocated at the end for people to submit any questions that we don't cover today. So the first question, we've selected Ellie, Donna, and Jessie to answer, but feel free to interject, Renee, if you have anything that you'd like to add. The question is, from your personal experience and observations, how would you describe the current state of gender diversity in the AI and tech industries? Might start with you, Ellie, first.
No problem. I think that it's very clear and well known that there are more men than women usually in tech. Am I meant to be holding this?
Maybe just hold it to just away from you a little bit. Sorry, because it's a little bit soft.
Is this better?
Yeah.
I'll hand this around. Cool. I think everybody knows there's more men than women in tech, and that statistic holds up in the UK, where, as you know, that's where I've had most of my working experience, but also in Australia. And it shows up time and time again in every industry that has some kind of technological involvement. So clearly that means there are more men at every level of those companies, and that leads to decision making largely being made by men versus women. And so that just means, factually speaking, that there are less women in the room, there's less diversity of thinking, and I think everyone can benefit from having more diverse companies. In terms of why that is the case, it doesn't start with when people join their company. It starts with what people learn in school and the careers that they're pushed towards, and societal things that we can talk about but truly are pervasive. I don't have the answers to all of those things, but I have to think about in my role, what can I do about it and how can I help it? And you'd know that because I work in HR, but that's what's super interesting to me about gender diversity.
Sure. So I'm probably more seasoned, that's code for older than most people in this business. And it means that I've been in tech probably a little bit longer, so well over a decade. And I'd like to acknowledge that I've seen change. So that's a great thing. From the very early stages of when I was first in tech, I was in a very male-dominated environment. But there has been growing appetite to see that shift. And I think what's really encouraging is we're constantly having these conversations. And I want to call out that today is not a day in singularity. What we're talking about is a general motion and approach to environments, full stop, beyond the 8th of March, every single day consideration beyond just gender diversity. And so when I walk into environments where they're still heavily male dominated, it's not just about the fact that there's a gender that's different in the room. It's about how that other gender, that male gender, responds to me being in that room. And I've certainly seen a change, and a welcome change in that. And I'd like to call out Leo because I have never once felt that my gender plays a part of how I'm heard here. And that's important for us all. It's important for anybody in this business to feel like what they're saying is validated regardless of how they present themselves, what their gender is, what their background is. So acknowledging change is important. Do we still have more to go? Sure. Absolutely. We still do have more to go. But it is encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I just look back at like the 10-year career and like or even earlier in high school, I think there was 3 girls who did IT. You don't feel very welcome in a space where nobody wants to collaborate with you, nobody wants to talk to you. It goes into hackathons. I go to hackathons every second weekend. Nobody wants you on their team, mainly because you are dismissed because you're bubbly and blonde, and therefore you can't be technically skilled. And yeah, it's just like these kind of perpetual like elements that keep coming in. But more than that, it's a sense of like community. People don't want to be in spaces they don't feel seen, heard, community supported. All these elements. Like I think the community element is so important, right? Because I can give you 10 of Australia's top women in tech that you probably don't have access to or know because they're not your friends. They're my friends, and so it's like we bring in more from different communities than when we invite in. I would also just mention how fiercely ambitious, resilient, determined women who work in these spaces are, because every single day you are having to keep and go against. So yeah, I think it's just like such an amazing community of people. It's consistent.
Yeah, I think it's really like all that. So even the right working persons like now, I actually started as a web developer and was in tech courses where I was one of like 2 females in this cohort of 3 people. And like, I have a funny story about it. I went from an all-girls school in the first category. Like complete opposite. And we got to about the 3rd year down, and one guy said to me, Renee, you're actually really cool.
Sorry guys, can we just stop 1 second? We're having a quick technical difficulty to quickly solve it. So to hold your thoughts. Thank you so much.
You are really cool.
Stop it here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you?
Why have you not noticed?
Yeah.
We need the punchline.
I'll
Is
do
there
it.
any set up-
Do we know where to cut
Post
out?
photos.
Yes,
I'm
that's
not-
a good
I'm
point.
not sure if it's there.
That's a good one.
I can restart the
Okay, we're
story.
live again, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you
restart the
so
story.
much.
I love this story.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna
Oren's at the door. Should we let him in first? Because otherwise he'll be.
I love tech things in a tech company.
Oh, it's the best.
I go on stage and
Like
my
when you
PowerPoint
try and
doesn't work and
share
I'm like,
people's
oh,
slides.
okay. Yeah, exactly. Easy. Cool.
Okay, Mike is good.
We good?
yeah, okay, cool. So we'll
Let's
recap.
start the story.
Yes.
I love your story.
Yeah, so I was one of few females in my tutorials in tech, and I got to the 3rd year in, and one of the guys randomly said to me, you know what, Renee, you're actually really cool. I was like, thanks. Why? Like, oh, we just thought you were really stuck up first year and didn't want to talk to us. And that was an assumption and that was a bias because I came from an all-girls school and I was just too shy to talk to them. So it took me a while to then build that confidence and become friends with them.
The term "you're actually smart." You can actually do this. You're met by this, and people undermine you, and they don't expect these things, and it's infuriating to constantly have to prove that your voice is worthy. I had to get external validators. I had a scholarship to Harvard, and it took that level of confirmation for other people to take what I was saying seriously. And it's just exhausting when you can't just go into a room and have your opinion. You have to prove your credentials to then have your opinion actually have valid backing. It's exhausting and infuriating. I don't know.
Should I hand it back?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for sharing. That's a very cool story.
Actually very cool.
Yeah, it's actually very cool. Yeah, I'm impressed and surprised. Huh? Okay, the second question is, drawing from your experience, could you describe the tangible effects of bias in AI algorithms you've encountered, and how do such biases impact users or communities? We might start with you, Renee, if that's okay.
Okay. Just hold the mic just a little bit further down.
Okay, cool.
Fine. I'll wait for you quite a bit.
Yeah, so AI uses data that's created by humans as a starting point to train that model. So what that means is that if there's bias going into the data, there's bias coming out, and that AI then has the ability to then amplify that bias at speed and at scale quite quickly. So like simple examples. So before today, I went to Leonardo AI and a bunch of other like image generation AI tools, and I typed in a doctor in a hospital and a nurse in a hospital. And no surprise, what do we think happened? All the doctors were male, and all the females were nurses. And that happened because that's a stereotype of the past where women have been underrepresented in that field. Another example of that, like Amazon made headlines around 2018 because they were using an AI model to shortlist applicants as part of their recruitment process. And that model used data of resumes from the last 10 years. And of course, that data didn't have an equal breadth or genders represented in that. So as a result, when they were using that AI model, it was biased and it was shortlisting men to move forward in the application process. So that's just one example where we have to be conscious of the bias that can be in AI, and it's kind of up to us to call that out and take action, not to let it continue. Is there any other examples where we can think of bias in tech?
Everything. You can go like the entire world. Like you can go everything from simple things like YouTube had an issue when they like released the product and they couldn't understand why like 25% of their users weren't using it correctly. They could not figure it out. And it came down that they forgot about left-handed users. Like it was just only designed for right-handed people. And that's just,
I feel so seen.
Yeah, there you go, cute. And it's, that's like a funny, sweet little example.
Yes.
But you go down the depth of, women can't get a job because LinkedIn has, or more like it's like parents. If it thinks that you're a parent, you're dismissed because you're not going to be as good of a worker, and all these other layers that are truly impacting our society. Like AI is the frontier of our future, and it is built off data, and our data sets aren't great because they're reflective of current situations, which also aren't great. And so I think it's going to have to take this active kind of step up. The hypersexualization of women within every single image that goes through generators is just kind of like, we can laugh at it and whatever, but the reality is like it continues to perpetuate this idea of objectifying women. And when you objectify women, then you discredit them for all these other qualities. And it goes back to the male gaze and blah, blah, blah. Like these are the systems of power that just continue and continue and continue. And it takes the active work and focus of people like us who are the designers and developers and the people who are building these technologies that we're putting out into the world. They have real life repercussions. And so we just have to be very conscious of that in how we build forward for sure. But yeah. I don't know if no?
Thank you. I think this is particularly pertinent given that we saw some drama with Google recently trying to address the implicit bias in AI algorithms and potentially taking it a little bit too far, generating dark-skinned Nazis and founding fathers and generating a lot of contention. But it's heartening to see that at least there are some efforts being made to address this. So long way to go yet. Okay, the next question is, why do you believe diversity within AI development teams could be critical in combating bias? And can you provide an example from your own work where a diverse team made a difference? Might pass it back to Jessie.
It's a bit of a pivot, but I'm Australia's ambassador for this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Innovation Lab. And as part of the lab, we bring together 140 different countries, 1,000 people from 140 different countries, and teams of like 5 work together. We're talking about 5 different countries, religions, ethnicities, languages, religions, this depth, which is just so rich. And the ability, and what happens when you put teams like that together is they can draw from pools that you've had no concept of. So somebody who, like a silly example, like in Sweden or something, their bike lanes are on the inside and cars on the outside, so that when cars drive past, they'll crash into a car rather than a person on a bike. And like the sharing of brilliant ideas that we see when we take like rich and diversity, like it is just so rich. Like I think that is what is, when you have a team of 5 who come from the same school, the same neighborhood, the same cultures, all of that, you are unable to think outside of your circle. So I think diversity in all the forms is just literally the most valuable thing you can bring to a team, for sure. I don't know if you have to add. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sort of that melting pot of creativity. That's a really good point. The next question is, can you share a pivotal moment in your career that highlighted the importance of gender diversity in AI and technology? Start with Ellie.
So naturally, this speaks more to my experience as a HR person, but a HR person working in technology companies. So it's always been my role to introduce schemes around performance and pay. And at Depop, their mission as a company was to build the world's most diverse, progressive home of fashion. So you couldn't get a much more compelling mission in terms of how you actually go about building those structures. But when I went to rebuild performance reviews in that company, I did some research, and a company called Textio, if you haven't heard of them, they normally their day job is to provide software for people to analyze job adverts and review whether the advert is inherently male coded or female coded to help you combat bias in the wording of that job ad. But how Textio had taken that research further is they'd analyzed 25,000 performance reviews with ratings. And what they learned in that process is that women were 22 times more likely to be called aggressive or abrasive. They were, even high-performing women, by their ratings, were 78% of those still got negative feedback, whereas 2% of the men in the same group got negative feedback if they were rated as high-performing. And they were something like 7.8 times more likely to get personality feedback than men. So I think that tech can really help us analyze really large groups of data so that we can educate people. And how I saw that as a pivotal moment is I realized that in people teams, we don't tend to talk enough about that stuff because it feels a bit icky to go out and talk to your company transparently about how gender roles can play a part. And by the way, it's not just gender roles. So there's something called intersectionality. And if you're a woman of color, that feedback then becomes even severely worse in your favor because you are more likely, again, to be deemed as abrasive or aggressive if you are somebody who asserts yourself. So when you learn about that, you can actually teach people and you can get your leaders together as you roll out performance frameworks, and you can say the data tells us this. So how can we think about that in our unconscious bias? Because those 25,000 performance reviews that Textio would have analyzed, I don't imagine every single manager that was delivering that performance review was a dick, right? So clearly there's something inherent in there. There would have been male managers, female managers. And one of the things I'll say is I don't want any of the takeaways in this panel to be men are dicks and women are great. Because men can be dicks and women can be dicks and everybody can be great too. And that's all great. But if we don't learn about it, we don't combat it. So as I roll out things like pay and performance, know that from experience, I've had that pivotal moment where I've realized we need to do more in people teams to actually build structures that help account for things that have inherent bias in how they're built. And the reason that we ask you about how you identify is because anytime I've ever done pay and performance since then, before I go into the process, I look at what data I have. And once we start doing things like performance ratings, as we grow as a company, I check every single time how the data stacks up by the demographics that we have, because then I can use that to educate our managers, especially as we get into self-ratings. So what I saw at Depop was that women are far less likely to rate themselves as exceeding expectations than men. Within a year, we were able to flip that on its head, but that's because you have to talk about it. So for me, that's the really pivotal moment of it can be scary to talk about stuff like this in a really safe space, and a safe space for the men as well, delivering these performance reviews. But once you do, you can actually make change really quickly. And so that's been my pivotal moment.
Wow, that was impressive. And I think that, like, whilst Ellie works in a very dedicated area where there is a corporate pursuit of what diversity looks like, I think it's important to remember, I'm going to call out one thing that she said, is that women can be dicks and men can be dicks. And I'm going to share
the takeaway.
No, but it's important because I'm going to share a story about two CEOs that I worked with within the space of 6 months. one CEO I approached and said, hey, I want to continue my learning. I want to start growing a little bit more. I was already in a management position. I'm thinking about doing my MBA. That CEO said, are you sure you can handle it? Do you think you're the right person to do this? And I left. The next CEO, I said, guess what? I'm doing my MBA. They said, that's really interesting. I haven't employed anybody with an MBA before. I've got some different views on it, but I support you. And that's going to look like 8 days of annual leave a year where you can contribute that time to critical moments in your study. That CEO went in a quick succession to throw not projects, but businesses at me because they saw that I was investing in myself and wanting to grow myself. No surprise that that second CEO was a man. So when the first CEO tells you, as a growing into your management era, that you may not be capable, and that CEO is also a woman, where is that allyship? Where is that support and growth? And the point here is that this diversity and support of any gender is not one gender's responsibility. It's about growing us as humans. And yes, there are some disadvantages, but everyone can be dicks. But flip that on its head and everybody can be an encouraging manager. That second CEO enabled me to grow about 5 different businesses to the point that I got to COO in some of them. That's huge. He built my confidence in myself where a previous woman had depleted it. So just remember how words matter, guys, how actions matter, regardless of, not guys, people, how that transpires in your day. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah. I suppose you've touched on this idea of mentors and allies. Like, I have been so lucky to have some mentors in my life that have just like excelled my career by years, through programs of trying to, I suppose, give opportunities to people that haven't had access to these rooms and that kind of stuff. And it's like when you give people access at any kind of level, like the long-term effects just are incredible and rapid. And I think that mentorship, both from like the emotional level, like you're talking about, of building confidence and that, but also the actual like access point of enabling access into rooms that previously haven't been let in just because, you know, you're not reflective of that community. But I completely acknowledge the element of, like we said, intersectionality. And I'm very aware of the privilege that's afforded as a white woman in Australia. And I think that is just a whole other field in itself, and the power dynamics and understanding why systems work the way they do and how much work needs to be done to dismantle that.
Yeah, I'll add to that. We've already started talking about the importance of allies in helping us in our careers. And at the same point, the people that I've looked up to help me with some critical movements in my career have been both male, they've been both male and female. And the reason I looked up to them was because they made me feel respected and they made me feel safe and they made me feel valued. And that can be the case regardless of what gender we are or what age we are or what culture we are. So that's something that we also just need to be conscious of because we all play a part in that.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Fascinating stuff. The next question is, what initiatives and policies could be implemented to help close the gender gap in AI and technology? Might throw it back to Renee to start with, if that's good.
Hey, thank you. So no surprise, looking around the room right now, there is more of one gender than the other. And like, yes, we need support systems in place for once people are in the tech workforce so that they have the support there that they need to feel supported. Though the reality is that that gender bias and that gender gap actually starts well before the workforce. So I decided that I wanted to go into tech because of a substitute teacher when I was 12 at school. And she had this like radiant passion for technology. And she let us, during class time, edit photos and videos to create a digital yearbook that they hadn't done at the school before. So just from that moment, from when I was 12 in this small primary school in Wollongong, that teacher doesn't know that that's led to me working now in AI as a product designer. And that's really cool. And so I think that what that story shows is that, yes, we need support systems at at multiple points in someone's life. But a key thing that we need to do is target people at an early age in order to spark interest. And that could be done through mentorship programs, interactive workshops, and just things that are targeted at actually chatting to kids early and also educating them about the possibilities of what's in tech. And something else to add is that you don't have to be a tech background. Don't have to have a tech background to work in tech. No, that's not a stereotype that everyone would naturally know.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to get into the idea of diversity quotas. You'll probably be able to speak to that better than I can. But this idea of, if you want to have executives who are women in these spaces who are building technology, which is impacting at least 50% of the world, it's like we need to be having people in those positions. And I actually really support diversity quotas in the sense of trying to get people into positions of power earlier. And I think that's what we're needing to get. I don't know if you want to talk about power structures, but it really is having people in positions of power who can then make executive decisions that empower. When you have women I have a background in film, and it's the exact same in film. It's the exact same in all of these. There's 3% of creative directors are female. That's insane to me. That's the creative industries, and we still see these. It's just positions of power, and so I think to be any sort of dismantling, there has to be active. People don't give up power. It's made. And I think we have to kind of be moving towards making space for that.
I can speak to lots of policies, but I'll try and keep it short and sweet. Just know that as I think about anything that we're implementing, but also how I think about the people function and leading as an exec in this company, I think about representation in every sense of how we go about things. So when I first joined, Jerome and I looked at representation, and it's very clear to see that we had low female representation. And that was important to acknowledge, but it was a very welcome discussion. It wasn't taboo, and it still isn't a taboo subject. What we've been able to do since then is be really intentional. As we mature our function, we've been able to introduce an applicant tracking system where from the very first day it went live, we were collecting people's self-reported diversity data. So we knew how many women are applying versus men. And we also collect a whole bunch of demographic data. But we also then can see how balanced our pipelines are so that when we are sourcing for roles, we make sure women are in the process from the start. And that helps us to change the story around representation here. But also it goes beyond that. So we can source great women and make sure that they get into the process, and then may the best candidate win. But great women have to be in the process for that to happen. But once they're here, it's how do we support people as they enter parenthood? How do we make sure that we don't have really imbalanced policies around what parental leave women get versus what parental leave men get? It's not just about supporting women, it's supporting men to go and take those roles so that the women in their lives can also have a balanced family dynamic. And so that structures around the world don't make that easily possible, because women are the people carrying babies, so they get more parental leave. That makes perfect sense. But in many countries, men are only entitled to 2 weeks and then they're back to work. And so the structure that builds in a society is that, one, men have to go back to work to earn the money because statistically speaking, they're most often the highest earner. And if they don't get paid parental leave structures, that forces that to happen so that they can't take further time off, and the problem continues. So then women take a longer career break. They also then normally have an unpaid element of that career break. And that has impacts on their career for sometimes years. Now, I'm not saying that it has to. I think it's really important to say that women's careers don't have to stop when they have children. But there are things that happen when society create these structures that are really tangible and intangible. So as I think about policy making, and I think about it in terms of what can we do as we make policies, but also as countries, like when you create parental leave policies, you really set things in motion. So as we're doing that as a company, we're going to put that at the heart of how we're thinking about the direct consequence of what we're trying to do, but also think of the unintended consequences that we might be setting into motion when we do things. That's not to say that we're going to get every single thing right every time, but I think the other thing is having the humility to take feedback from you all of where we're getting it right and wrong. And going back to what I said earlier, when we run things that have a structural impact, we will do the check and balance on are women getting less pay than men? Are women getting a less big pay rise than men? Are women being rated differently on their performance than men? And that might uncover things that are not going in men's favor either. And that's important. So hopefully that speaks to some of the things that we can actually tangibly do in our company to help this problem.
Thank you. And yeah, I'd love to take the opportunity just to give a shout out for the efforts that we have seen made in the business since you came and joined us, Ellie, in leading the people function. And also Jerome, I personally found it really eye-opening, just the data on the wording of the ads influencing the level of, women who are comfortable enough to apply. And I also think that just excelling in your own career and acting as role models is really heartening as well to help address the issue that Renee was identifying, which is really early on. People need to see it as a possibility to put it on their radar. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. The next question is, how can people effectively serve as allies to support and promote underrepresented genders in the AI and technology sectors? And can you share a personal experience where allyship made a difference? We'll start with you, Ellie, if that's okay.
I think the fact that you're all here, like watching this panel and taking time out of your day, that is allyship. And that's one piece of allyship. The fact that, Chris, you've been so supportive as I've come in and made suggestions on the people function, I have felt, to Donna's point, so welcomed into this company and bringing a perspective of diversity, which is my job, but also the suggestions that I make, I feel allyship every day in the exec team that we have here and the founders that we have here. So that's a way that I personally benefit from allyship in this company. How I think I can be a great ally or have been a great ally is because of my job, I get access to rooms that lots of people aren't in. And so when I've been in companies with more formal structures around things like pay, promotion, performance, I'm able to be an ally for the people that aren't in the room. So where I think people are being overlooked for promotions, let's say I've heard from their manager in their one-on-ones that they're excellent time and time and time again, but then we're in a promotion round and they're not being put up for promotion. That's a moment where I can be an ally and I can help drive change. And I have been able to drive change in companies by doing that for people. And that's something they may never know, but that's not what's important. I think allyship isn't about necessarily what people see and hear you do. It's about the things you do because they're the right thing to do. And the things people see and hear important and meaningful, to your point of the CEO who was an ally to you. But don't think about it just in terms of what you can do that the other person sees. Think about it in terms of the actions that you can take all the time, because they do have an impact. And that's really important.
I think that allyship, in my mind, requires a network effect. And everything that I have been afforded, I so too should pass forward. And that means that women in my circles, and I have some really large groups of female founders and funders, I provide them with whatever, if I can, access, conversations, support, introductions, venting ears, slipstreams to opportunities, whatever it could be, to assist in that acceleration, because I too have been afforded that in the past. Getting this role was an allyship. I had no connection with anybody in this business, but a previous manager who has a close connection with this business said, you have to talk to this woman. And I was lucky enough to have that opportunity. How else could I have perhaps approached? Direct, yes, sure. But sometimes you need somebody to not just open the door, but push you through it. And I think that's what network effect helps as well, is that the women in my network, I should pay back to, as well as develop those who come into the network or who may not yet be in the network or who are in this room and ask for help. But as a caveat, I would do that to any, let's just put that out there, good human. But in the context of what we're saying right now, I think it's really important to provide people with what they can see, they can be. I didn't see women in the roles that I play now when I was growing up. But that's not to say that my daughter won't see that now. She sees that. I make a concerted effort.
You.
She sees me. She does. She does see me. I make a concerted effort to exactly what you were both sharing. STEM, when I went to school, looked like design and technology, and that looked like you made a dress. Not you had a keyboard, not you understood the basics of engineering, not you knew how to code. So some of the things that I've done the last couple of years is take coding programs to schools. Really young primary school age kids, that they learn how to code a basic game. In that room, maybe someone like Renee, who's 12 years old or 7 years old and gets a spark of interest in something. Those are the things we can do daily. We cannot solve this problem. I say you can never eat an elephant with one bite. You have to take bite by bite, and that's every day going, oh, that's really interesting. That human, might be a female, has asked for some help. What can I do to extend that help? So keeping that top of mind, I think, is really important.
Thanks. I just go back to when I met the boys. I met Jakin and Jono and everyone at South by Sydney last year, and it was like instantly we were hanging out, we were chatting. I remember there was like eight dudes at this dinner table, and I'm like talking about this AI thing, and I wasn't, aside from visually, I wasn't made to feel like I wasn't meant to be there. I don't know how else to word it other than I go into tech rooms a lot, and a lot of the time it's very apparent that you are the other. But I was sitting in this, I think you were there as well, Chris, actually. Yeah, we were at this restaurant, and it was just like this feeling of like they wanted to know what I was talking about. And the fact that I was having this conversation based on the information that I was sharing was what made me feel like, it was actually the reason I came and work here. Because I absolutely just loved the boys. Like I just loved the way that they made me feel, where it was like I was being valued based on my ideas and thoughts. And so I think in terms of an allyship, like giving people that level of respect, everything comes back to respect. The whole thing is grounded on this basis of respecting and value opinions, and also listening. I think is the other element. It's like there's no point in having a diverse team if we're there for optics. I don't want to be in a room for optics ever. I don't want to be on a panel for optics ever. I want to be there because I actually have something of great value to add to the conversation, which I do. So it's like just making sure that's part of it. But yeah, I genuinely do feel exactly what everyone else has reflected on that.
Yeah, I can also echo that, to the importance of the network for allies, and also just being made to feel comfortable in the space that you are, like where you are. And I can also say that being here at Leonardo, I've always felt like respected, and that I could share what my thoughts and what my perspective were actually on the tech and how we can improve the design. And then thinking back to just different moments in my career, I have got to where I am because of mentors that I had and people that I mentored back. So when I decided to shift from agency into products, I called up one of my mentors I hadn't spoken to for 6 months and said, hey, I'm thinking about this switch going into startup. Can I just brainstorm with you some ideas around that and what that might mean for my career? And they hadn't talked to me for 6 months, so they didn't have to say yes, but they did take the time after work and to have a chat to me, and that just really helped build the confidence in me that I could do that, and because they were people that I looked up to.
Thank you. Okay, the final question before we open it up to viewers is, in what ways can individuals in leadership positions leverage their influence to advocate for gender diversity and inclusion initiatives? Ellie, did you want to kick us off?
I think I've shared a lot about this already, so +1 to everything I just said, answering that question. But the final thing I'll say is it really comes down to the structural policy building and how we build this company and this people function. That's what the team, the leadership team, everyone who's a line manager, but everyone in this company, we contribute towards every day. So really thinking about this in a very critical year for us, where we're building and scaling our company, those are the day-to-day things and the big structural things that we can do to help make an impact on everything we just discussed. And if you have ideas, make sure that you come and chat to us about them. That's the other thing I would say. You don't have to be a leader in an org chart in order to lead change. Everybody has influence. Everybody has ideas. And if you need allyship, mentorship, sponsorship of your ideas, please know that this group, and I really truly believe the group of leaders we have would open doors for you. And if you're not seeing that happen, come and chat. But that's the company that we want to build. So just know the intention is there.
So non-policy related, I'm sitting in front of a room that when you close it looks like a boardroom. And in there sit 6 people, 2 of which are female and 4 of which who aren't. And we talk about lots of different things to help navigate this business. I believe I have a sense of responsibility to us as a business to open that door to anybody coming in and changing that thought, providing that insight that we might not have at the deepest levels, providing advice, direction, and structure. And sometimes those people are going to be women. And in those circumstances, I may need to over-encourage them to step into that room. There is often some hesitancy as females to step into those environments because they feel unwelcoming. I'm not saying this one's unwelcoming. This one's fine, guys. I've been in some really, really unwelcoming environments. But generally speaking, our confidence to step into those environments isn't always strong. And depending also on our personalities. And I want to call out that on this group here, we have some alignment in what our personalities are. We're bold communicators. We're confident in doing that. But personalities play a different part in all of us. So not everybody would feel welcome walking through that door. As a leader in this business or in any other business, I would encourage, it is my responsibility to encourage you to walk through that door as a female who may not have the confidence to do so, whose personality is different to mine or those in the room, whose ideas perhaps haven't been heard. That's my job.
I'll just add on that. It's funny when we see, women in power quite often are reflective or mimic male leadership behaviors. Strong, loud, confident, etc., all these qualities. And it's because that's what we've had to mimic to be able to feel as if like our thing is of worth. It's this weird thing, whereas it's like the beauty of diversity is that you don't need that. Like different qualities come out with these different elements. And so it's this idea that women in power have to act like a, man in a suit. Like that's missing that's missing the depth that we're talking about. The depth is this whole other thing that you bring to the space.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So that ends the pre-prepared questions section. We are now going to open it up to any questions that any viewers may want to ask. So if you haven't seen it already, there should be a link on the live stream, I believe, to submit questions. As a stopgap, feel free to just DM them to Susan. She's going to be feeding them to me. We've already got a number that have been submitted, so we'll jump straight into it. And these are open for anyone who would like to answer them. The first one, looks like they're all anonymous, so here we go. Great conversation. If you had a magic wand and could change one thing for women in tech, what would it be?
Entire system.
Yeah.
I think the easiest magic wand would be to fix representation because there are so many knock-on effects of that. So if I could wave a magic wand and there be equal representation, there's reflective of demographic data in global markets, that would be the magic wand that I think would have a huge impact.
I found mine. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Women's startup in tech don't get funded. They don't get funded. They don't get funded. I don't know if you can speak to data. I'm bad.
I do have a data.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm so bad with numbers. But this idea of, we come up with these things, we pitch them, but they do not get funded. And statistically, it is like,
I'll give you the stat.
I'm like really bad.
So the stat is women-founded startups received only 4% of the $3.5 billion of Australian funding in 2023.
4%. Like, how are we meant to change the world if the things that women are bringing forward are not getting supported? You cannot fix the problems. Like, money runs everything. And for me, the magic wand would be, why is it 4%? Can we get it to 20%? Can we get it to 40%? Can we be getting these solutions that are actually impacting other markets? I think there's the other things, like, people are missing the commercial benefits, the financial benefits that you get. You are missing a market, like a massive market. Women's purchasing power as well. We purchase this shit. Like we're the ones that have to go do all the shopping. Like, it's insane to me. Like, it's insane to me the commercial business opportunities that are being missed in this space. I just can't understand it. Yeah.
So much to say on that. don't have enough time, but I will say two things, and I don't want two things. I don't want one thing. I want two things. I want to change. So the first thing to that point is give the money to female investors. First thing, let's get some females making the decisions on where investment goes. I think if you look at the stats of some of the female founded funds in Australia, you will see they have really, really strong returns. What happens there? Females typically have, this works for and against, typically have a lower threshold of risk. Therefore, things like due diligence in assessing startups, be they female or male, is comprehensive, and they make strong bets with backing. That's one thing. The other thing, I'd go on the other end of the spectrum. Here we are, give me the money when I've got it done. I want to go right back to the start. In kindergarten, let's start talking about anybody can do anything and teaching them how to get that done. Show the girls they can be in tech. Show them what STEM diverse roles look like. There's not one lane, there's not two lanes. There are multiple lanes. Bring this into the conversation. If we expect this country to grow by the innovation here, we need to take the 50% of the community and get them upskilled at a really early age and teach them that they can. So they're my two things.
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. If I also had a magic wand to be something similar, is educating kids at a young age what the possibilities are in tech, and then teaching them how to use it to spark that interest. Again, if I think back to high school, I was at an all-girls school, and I did IT and I did design computing, and I wanted to do a course that was about programming. But I was at an all-girls school and very few people signed up to do that course, so I wasn't able to do it. So if we could magically go back in time and say, okay, cool, so perhaps there wasn't enough people at that school to do it, that they could have gone, okay, well, what are other ways that Renee could have actually had the opportunity to do that, whether it be through something that was outside the school or just looking at other alternatives.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh my God, I'm so angry about that stat. I'm furious. Oh my God, I knew it was that. But can you actually think about that? 96% of startups in Australia, that money goes towards men for a country with 50% women. That's.
I think there are systemic issues with that. Is how can we encourage more women to build startups in general, so that the pipeline ends up being a different perspective? Like I said, so many feelings. We can There's a lot of feelings. Let's just go to the next question.
Yeah, I'll second that. That is a very shocking stat, particularly given that we only have to look down the road for one of the greatest startup successes in Canva and Melanie Perkins. If only 4% is going to women, then that's insane that despite that, we've got one of the best successes we've ever seen from a female founder. Thank you for sharing. The next question is, can you provide any small tips or ideas on how individual contributors, i.e. not managers or senior leaders, can help bridge the gender gap in AI and tech?
Are we talking about the technology or those who work in tech?
I think you can choose how to answer it, since that's all we've got. At the moment.
I'd just echo what I said of good ideas come from anywhere and everywhere. So you don't have to be a leader, an exec, a manager. You can be anyone and your idea will be valuable. And if you think so Donna and I in a book that came out today, a quote that got highlighted. So it was a book of 100 stories of women. And when I read it this morning, I had a moment of doubt in myself, because the quote they highlighted for me was, it's okay to say stupid things sometimes. And that was taken out of context, but I meant it. So you can think that something's a stupid idea. Firstly, it's probably not. Somebody else is probably thinking it. There are so many times that I've sat in rooms, including the exec room, somebody said something and I've thought like, hang on a minute, that doesn't make any sense. But I didn't say anything because I thought I would sound stupid. And then like Donna will say it and I think, oh, Donna, I was thinking that. Like, this happens to me all the time. And so I think that we all hold ourselves back, men and women, especially when we don't have that inherent seniority in the room, in saying what we're thinking. And actually, yeah, it is okay to sound stupid sometimes. My name is plastered on this quote in this book, but you probably don't sound stupid. And even if you do, like, how much do you actually judge someone for one thing they say that sounds a bit off? You probably forget about it in 2 seconds and move on. So say the stupid thing is what I would encourage people to do.
I would say you all probably know a female. Ask them their advice. Ask if you've got a problem that you're trying to solve, whether it be here in your personal life, whatever it may be, and if it is to try to generate some thought or what do you think about this design? Insert woman A. That's interesting. What could I learn from that? Some things I might pick up, some things I might not pick up. I think just involve other people in your thoughts. I'd also encourage you all, but males to speak on this too. Like, I've been thinking about this and it doesn't sit quite right with me. Just talk to any manager. It doesn't matter what role they're playing. This is a safe environment and an open environment. And I would encourage you to think about how you feel about stuff that we've spoken today. And if something comes up, share it.
Yeah, I think education is literally the most valuable thing we have as a community, and I think because we have such a beautiful community with Leo, like if you have a like in a question, it's like, oh, you know, you're embarrassed or scared to ask, like just ask. Like I want to help you, you want to help me. It's this community of us wanting to help each other, and I think that idea of like upskilling in your private time is also really valuable. Like if you don't understand the gender pay gap, like look into it. Little things like you might not have mentioned with Ellie, like the idea of women don't get superannuation when they're going and raising a kid. Like, so it's not just these little things, it's these long-term, and then say, for example, you know, there's a divorce that happens years later. Women don't have that money from the superannuation. Like it's these giant level things. So I think really putting in the time and effort to understand the things that we're talking about, like, I think lived experience is the most valuable data point you'll ever receive. And, you know, you're in a room of people that want to share that lived experience with you. So, yeah, please come ask dumb questions. Like I would prefer to have and especially because a lot of the time I think people are really uncomfortable asking certain questions. Like if you are able to work through that discomfort to get to understanding on the other side, like that to me is the most valuable, rich takeaway we can kind of build, because that's how you get progress. That's how we actually make progress.
Yeah, just to add to that, like we don't need to be a senior or a leader in order to impact change. So whether that be just speaking out within the groups that we have access to, or like in my situation, throughout my tech career, I've gone to a lot of meetups, both about tech and both design. And just by talking to people around me who are trying to get into the industry and asking me questions about like, what do you think about like what I need to have in my resume? How does a portfolio work? What should I be thinking about? Could you have a look at it for me? So they're all like examples where like I don't need to go out and blast that, but just happy things that are happening on the side where like anyone can go to that meetup and chat to people and have an impact on someone who's wanting to be in that space.
Yeah,
Thank you. Perfect. So the next question is, what practical advice would you give women who are ready to take up space in their male-dominated workplace but are unsure how to start asserting themselves?
Go on, Donna. I heard that.
Take up space. Yeah. I think it's, I can only draw upon how I did it, and I'm not saying it's the right way to do it, and I'm not saying that these environments still exist. But often, if two people of differing genders are trying to achieve the same thing, what can happen is that one talks and the other one does. And I have found that when I want to take up space or work towards taking up space, I show you how I can do it rather than telling you I can do it. That's ultimately a female trait as well. We won't take on things that we don't believe we can do yet. But I'm also of that personality type to say that I will show you how effective I can be. I will show you I can achieve this. I will learn to be better at this. And those are tangible proof points that people can see. And I think people look for evidence and data to validate contribution and your weight as an individual. And I think that has helped me. I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm saying that's what's helped me.
Yeah, I would just add to that in the sense of believe in your competence, because you're constantly undermined and told not to. And when you're getting that external thing, like it does eat you, but believe in the competence underlying it. And I think that's so funny, that idea of we do have to constantly like do the work to prove it. Like if you are given an opportunity, take it. Take it fiercely. You will meet the goal. I promise you. You set the goal, you're going to meet it no matter what. And if you turn it down because you're like, oh, I don't think, you've just missed the golden kind of ticket forward. So I think just leap at opportunities when they come to you.
Sorry, the other thing I just want to add is when you take that chance, tell other people you are taking that chance so they support you through it.
Yes.
Nobody wants to see you fail. And particularly as a female, it's really important to know that when I doubt myself, somebody else believes in me. And it's great to have that as a male, but it's contextual when it's another female that helps you along as well, or a group of them.
Yeah, I can say that's exactly how I ended up here today speaking. I was asked to be part of the panel, and be honest, I was shit scared. There's a lot of people watching us right now. We're blasting this everywhere, but I'm like, okay, cool. One of my professional things I've wanted to work on is confidence in public speaking and helping to make a difference. So yes, I felt very uncomfortable before being here and feeling more at ease, but that was an opportunity for me to say yes and give it a go. And I told this group, I told my manager how I was feeling, and they were all very reassuring. Like, Renee, you can do this. Just talk about your experience and it's all going to be okay. And I'm so glad that they gave me that reassurance and that confidence, because it's like why I'm actually here today talking.
Well, you've smashed it.
Yeah.
And then because you've done this, the next thing you do, because you can do that, it's like the building, like this, the higher you set these things, the next thing is just easier and easier and easier. And then other people in the team have seen that you've done this, and then this happens. It's just it's got such a good ripple effect.
Absolutely. I would also say do it in lots of small ways of like people ask you to do stuff all the time. Say yes, do it. Show to yourself that you can do it. But then also don't be scared of like setting big goals. So I went on a trip for HR people. I'm sure that sounds like lots of people's worst nightmare. But it was a volunteering trip and we delivered some training. Anyhow, when I was on that trip, I was by far the youngest and by far the most junior. I got on that trip because of a sponsorship from another woman that was going on it and had met me at a conference. When I was on that trip, I met somebody who really inspired me, who said, I was the UK's youngest HR director because when I was 30 or whatever. I don't even know if that was a true stat. I don't care. When I met her, I was like, well, if you can do it, I can fucking do it. And so I went into my interview at Depop. My manager at the time, different Chris, some really great Chris allies in my career. Find yourself a great Chris. He said the classic question of like, where do you want to go? And I said, well, Chris, I want to beat my friend Kelly to be the UK's youngest HR director. And he was like, okay, cool. So he hired me. He actually then left the company, and through that sponsorship, I became the HR director of Depop. I think I was 26 at the time.
Yay.
And if I hadn't have set that goal, even though I thought it was ridiculous, by the way, if I hadn't have set that goal, I wouldn't have pushed myself in all of the small ways where I got opportunities to be in rooms, to excel in whatever ways. I would have never got there in the time frame that I did. And I set that goal thinking I may never get there, but if I have a goal, I'll get further than I would have done otherwise. So I'd say do all the small things, but dream big if you want to. And you don't have to know what that goal is yet, but when you have it, set a big one, because you'll make small steps along the way.
I love a North Star metric.
I was going to add on Ellie's story. Like the thing that's funny about this is the passing of time, right? So for almost 10 years ago, whatever, I got this opportunity with Facebook when I was 22. I was 22. I was the youngest person in the room. I was obviously shitting myself. I was like, holy crap. There was like the head of the UN thingy there. There was like Zuckerberg upstairs. And the whole time I was like, oh my God. Now I had a mentor and she was amazing. Her name's Annie. She's absolutely amazing. And this has been a 10-year relationship. She's now the head person at Netflix's innovation thing. And it is like, I have a contact now with the top people, and not just Annie, but every single woman or every person who was in that room 10 years ago who were already kind of senior back then. They're now all the directors. They're all the head of the top companies in the world. And that's a 10-year relationship that I've fostered where now I'm at a point in my career where we can kind of step forward. But I just think that longevity piece that we're talking to, like the relationships that you build are so valuable. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for opportunities like that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we can distill that down to find yourself a Chris.
Find yourself a Chris.
No, I'm joking. Very, very good advice.
That's what allyship looks like.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, the next question is, who are the most inspirational women leaders you look up to, and how can Leo learn from these people?
My most inspirational woman leader, and the reason I grabbed the mic, is Donna, and I mean that.
What?
So there are two. There's two. My most inspirational woman leader in this company is Donna. I think she's phenomenal. And when I joined and Jerome said, we've hired a chief of staff too, her name's Donna. Firstly, I was like a week and a half into being into this country, so I needed to make some friends. And so I reached out to Donna and was like, do you want to go for coffee? From the moment I met Donna, I knew that she would be someone that, one, I'm going to be thinking about in my entire career of what is it about Donna that makes her so amazing, and how can I even emulate 1% of that? Because she is so able to synthesize information. She is such a thoughtful communicator, but a brave communicator. And that is so powerful. And Donna is a huge inspiration to me. The other person is at Depop, our CEO, Kruthi. She joined halfway through my time there, and she was a first-time CEO. She'd been, Etsy acquired Depop. Etsy then put their chief product officer into Depop as their CEO. Watching her journey as a first-time CEO and how phenomenal she was, and better than a lot of the male CEOs I'd worked with before. And that was because she was, again, such a thoughtful communicator, but a brave communicator. She was unafraid to come in and make change, but do it with complete humility about where we were going as a company. We were actually struggling as a company at the time, and she actually came in and acknowledged that and made change. And she wasn't afraid to take big risks, but also to make big, tough decisions. And so I have felt so inspired working alongside Kruthi and being her partner in making that change. And then thinking about making a change in my job because I was moving country, I really craved having that partnership from another inspirational woman. And then I found Donna. So I was very excited about that relationship.
Feel extremely awkward about this. Don't, but I will pay you later. That is so very kind and sweet, and I don't think I have done those things. But I think the stories you might hear are going to be very similar. My previous APJ director was a 5-foot fiery Taiwanese woman who I consider a very close friend. And part of that is when you work with a very considerate communicator, in her case, she would probably say she doesn't communicate so well. And I sometimes agree that, but the intent behind their actions becomes really, really important. Gina, she's since left AWS, as I have. That was kind of another allyship thing. Ex-Facebook, ex-Google, very big, large tech businesses, run significantly large teams. But at the heart of it, she actually cared really the most about the people. And how can I work with my team to build something better than what it is today? Because sometimes great feels a really long way. but better than what it is today, and waking up every day. And even though it's hard and trying to work through those things, she would go into battle for us with the VPs, and me sitting behind her going, can we do this? Can we get this done? And this 5-foot woman would charge with her personality height and her love of people. That was her grandeur. And I learnt from her every day. I learnt how to be bolder in rooms where I felt intimidated. I have learnt to rely on other women for support. That's not something that I naturally did well. I felt that I was a very independent individual and that I will sort this out by myself. But she taught me about the benefit of just sharing with others who have been in similar situations. And we could call that mentorship, we could call that venting, therapy, whatever you want to call it. That's a really important piece. But I think some of the themes that we're sharing is that these women helped us bring out perhaps what we weren't comfortable in doing in ourselves, and also what we value as well is I value good humans and standing up for good humans and doing the right thing. And when you can see that translate into a leader, regardless of their height, but through their tenacity, it's a really powerful thing. And I'm thankful for that.
Mine's more abstract, but I am so inspired by women and activists, women who are in activism. Like particularly, you've got like Malala, you've got Greta Thunberg, you've got even AOC. You get into just these young women who have said hell no. They just said no, and the fire, this activist element to me is just what makes me get up every single day and imagine a better world. I've also got my creative inspiration of like Alana Glazer. She wrote Broad City. I don't know if anyone watches Broad City. Anyway, but I take them from all disciplines, all different worlds of where they've just said, well, you know what, this is my voice and this is what I'm going to continue because I believe in it. And I think like it just inspires me into every facet of my life.
Yeah, similar to what Donna was talking about, one of the mentors that I've had that have been of influence in my life is when I was working at a startup called Mabel, there was an exec of design, her name was Sophie, and you could see her personality was very lively. She would go into the room and she would defend her team and advocate for what was best for the team so that we had the support to do our job. And although she was doing that and I looked up to that, there was always also still moments where I saw vulnerability in her, where sometimes perhaps she was nervous, being in a presentation with the whole company, especially when she was like moving on and having to give a speech. And when I saw that, I'm like, if she can feel that and she's at that level, it's unrealistic for me to think that for me to be at that level of executive design that I have to be perfect and I'm not allowed to be nervous. So just seeing that in her made me go, okay, it's okay to feel this way and we just need to push forward.
Yeah, cute. I think that teaches us a lesson is that anybody in your span has something to learn from them. You have something to be inspired by them. These three women on the couch, I didn't feel particularly Kalia, thank you for all the work that you're doing with you are a phenomenal individual and an inspiration, but she showed me a post that she wanted to put onto LinkedIn and I was like, oh fuck. That feels uncomfortable. She did it and I just went, well, it's just a day, somebody will scroll past it. But other people stretch your boundaries and that's inspirational to see other people stretching us. And the reality is you don't need a grand person in your life that is all things to all facets of who you are. You collect them along the way and you see something in everybody.
You imagine how much you've inspired Ellie already. Look how much like you inspire, people in your life.
Everyone needs a Chris. That's it. Chris.
Chris's can be female too.
Everybody needs a Chris and everybody needs a Donna.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm just a bit conscious of time.
Yeah.
I think we could go on all day and it would be fascinating, but maybe there's a couple of questions that we could share amongst the panel and then post later on. So I might do one final question if that's okay, which has been asked twice in two different versions. It effectively boils down to, can you recommend a way to find a mentor or how to effectively find and engage a mentor in your field?
I keep going first, so.
I am part of so many programs, honestly, and they are out there. We want to change these stats. Like can be something as simple as Googling, like, oh God, I don't know, like mentorship programs within your city. Different disciplines have them as well. So there would probably be one for devs, designers. They have them across all the spectrums. Like these are initiatives. A lot of the time they'll have like 6-week programs where they can work on different qualities, or it's not necessarily even the content that you learn through it. It's the ability to build those mentorship partnerships, because the women or people, they're not, a lot of the time they can be, of any gender, have actively said, I want to make space for bringing other people up. So I reckon it's just as similar as Googling like programs in the initiative.
Yeah, and there's also a lot to be said about just like finding mentors organically, like in the workplace.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it has to be your manager. Just by talking to people, see you have similar interests of people that you can relate to, that can be your manager. And like, there's no harm in saying, hey, look, I really like our conversations. Would you mind being a mentor? Whether that be in work or out of work time as well. So they're all around us. You just have to find people that you connect to and you find inspiration from, and you want them to be that for you.
I would just suggest like a really practical way to go around mentoring. Some people get freaked out when you say, can you be my mentor? And you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do as a mentor? You start to undervalue what you can contribute. I would be really, give yourself a bit of self-reflection and say, what is it specifically that I'm looking to work on? And who in my immediate network can I ask for that assistance from? And if they don't know somebody, ask them to find someone in their network. So I want to learn how to do X particular skill, or I think I'm struggling with my communication skills. Who in my immediate network, I'm sure everybody's got more than 500 connections on LinkedIn. Go through all of them and say, who do I think is a great communicator? As an example, this person, or who in the company do you think might be able to help you? If they can't, then if they say, no, I can't quite do that, ask them this every single time you meet with someone. Can you recommend someone else? And keep going until someone says yes, and you will find it.
To add to the LinkedIn point, I would say, especially if, like me, you've maybe once had that network but go somewhere new and you don't have the same network. For me, it's because I moved halfway across the world. So LinkedIn has been crucial, and getting out and about to events. HR people love to run events. So I've been going to all manner of events, and I've already met some incredible people. And one of the things that made me successful early in my career was I went to a conference and I saw someone speak. Her name was Katrina Collier. And when she was speaking, I was thinking like, oh, that's so cool. I'd love to one day be able to do that. Then I noticed she was posting on LinkedIn about this volunteering trip for HR people, the trip I mentioned. And I messaged her on LinkedIn and asked her to tell me more. And she replied within 1 minute with her phone number and said, call me. Mm-hmm. Now, Katrina, none of you would know who she is, but in the HR circle in the UK, she was quite the thing. And for her to do that was pretty amazing. So she spoke to me instantly. I applied for the trip. I got onto it. I then, in the following year, I think spoke at 4 separate conferences because she had been asked to speak, and she had either said, yes, and you should also get Ellie to speak at your conference. Or she said, no, I can't, but you should get Ellie. And she also ran her own conference, and she had me speak at it as my first ever speaking opportunity. She had no reason to know I would be good, bad, otherwise. But she was there for me. And that was simply because I went to see her at a conference, didn't have the courage to speak to her at the conference, sent her that one LinkedIn message. And from there, I went on 2 volunteering trips. I had paid speaking events, and within a week I spoke in Ukraine and Moscow. That would never, ever, ever, ever happen again. So I would say just be bolshy, send LinkedIn messages. And if something doesn't happen from it, just keep trying. It really, you've got nothing to lose.
Just ask. People don't ask. And it is the reason that I think most of us, are because we are quite bold people who will ask because we will want to get a thing done. So I would just encourage you, like literally the worst thing that can happen is they say no. Like so you're in the exact same position.
Yeah.
Be polite about how you go about asking, but definitely like ask for opportunities, because then it makes people aware that you're hungry for stuff as well. If I've announced to you that I want this thing, in the back of your head, you're going to be thinking, like, if you're at a networking event and someone mentions it, you're like, oh, shit, she mentioned that a week ago. Oh, yeah, actually, I know someone who could do that for you. So just be really vocal about what it is that you're aiming for, I suppose.
Fantastic. Some great advice there. Yeah, thank you. As I said earlier, we're running a bit short on time, so apologies to the couple of questions that we didn't have time to answer. We'll see about getting them answered separately and sharing a link after the event. But just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone for tuning in and for your time this morning. Thank you to Kalia, Susan, and the rest of the marketing team for putting this fantastic event on. And in particular, thanks to our amazing panel. It's been an honor to host a panel consisting of such a driven and diversely talented group of women. And we also sincerely appreciate you being part of Leonardo's journey and helping us navigate through the challenges we've discussed. So thank you.
Thank you for being our Chris.
Anytime.
And everybody eat pastry.